Good morning, or maybe good evening, or good afternoon. My name is Vivian Acquah, and I'm the workplace wellness advocate, but also the nerd behind Let's Humanize the Workplace. And I'm so excited about today's interview because we're dealing with a new normal, and especially when it comes to employer branding, there's so much that we can learn from the following guest speaker, and there's so much that we can have, there's so much that we can talk about. But before I am going to introduce him, I'm just going to do some warm up, right? So for those of you who don't know me, Vivian Acquah, born and raised in Amsterdam. I'm currently broadcasting from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. I'm turning 40 this year, and I am a proud mother of Orlando and also a partner of Jan. And I'm currently dealing with the new normal. So I'm going to bring up my screen so that I can share a few things with you. Please engage with this conversation, and also let me know if you can hear me on LinkedIn, because what I normally do is I normally check LinkedIn to see if I'm live and if you can hear everything well. Apparently I'm live, so I can hear everything well. And also note that if you have anything to ask Nate or anything to ask me, just type in your questions, share your stories, and I will try to do a shout out in the meantime. Sharing is caring, so tag anyone you feel like should be watching this episode, because it's going to be a very juicy episode. I wanted to address something, and that's something that has been bothering me for a while now. I've been hearing that people are being kidnapped in Zoom calls, not only for 30 minutes, not only for 45 minutes, but Zoom calls that last longer than 1 hour, maybe Zoom calls that last 2 hours or sometimes 3 hours. And a lot of people are thinking that the way they used to have their meetings can be replaced by Zoom or can be replaced by video calling. And I want to raise some awareness regarding the screens. Right now we are on our phones, we are on our tablets, we are maybe watching TV, but also know that when you're watching too many screens, you will end up with a digital eye strain, and I want to prevent that. Please don't plan back-to-back video calling, and also try to mix it up. Do a video call, do a phone call, and give the person a rest, because they need to do their job as well. And know that, I don't want the new normal that we are dealing with right now is something that a lot of people are not used to, even I, because I'm currently working from home with my partner and my child. Luckily, my son is 6, so he understands a lot, but it's still a lot. And therefore, I also ask you to be mindful with the screens, to be mindful with the video calling, but also be mindful with planning all those meetings, because is it necessary to have all these back-to-back meetings so that you can address whatever it is you want to address? So I definitely want to share something regarding this. So this was a research that was done by Buffer and AngelList. And this was before Corona. So imagine what the percentages will be after the lockdown, because I assume that collaboration and communication and loneliness and not being able to unplug will go sky high. It will go sky high. So definitely be mindful of that. And because of that, I'm organizing a webinar. It will be a Dutch webinar. Oh, I'm not showing you right now. It will be a Dutch webinar, but I'll show the link later. And I also wanted to share the lady who is responsible for the connection of Nate. So I asked Courtney if she knew somebody regarding employer branding, and she told me that I should definitely connect with Nate. So with no further ado, I'm going to bring him up. And also going to introduce him properly. So Nate Guggia, I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing it right.
It's Guggia, but
Guggia. Okay.
yeah. Don't worry, you're not alone.
Nate Guggia leads brand marketing at 𝗕𝗺𝗿𝗃, a creative studio that specializes in employer branding content. Based in San Francisco, that's where I lost my heart. I love the Golden Gate Bridge anyway. This is a side note, but 𝗕𝗺𝗃 has special expertise writing for highly technical audiences in extremely competitive markets that help startups and talent teams hire fast. Welcome, Nate.
Hey.
Are you excited?
I am. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Cool. So going back to how are things? How is your current situation?
I think it's interesting is like the best way to say it. You know, at times it's frustrating. At times it kind of feels like it did before. You know, like being part of a fully remote team and working remote for a long time, that part of it hasn't been too much of a transition. But at the same time, like my son's home full time and there's just like a lot of other expectations put on, and also with like limitations, it's pretty disruptive. You know, and also too, like as an industry, I think like we'll talk more about it, but like things are really shifting in the industry that I work in, which is, I don't know, it's like, it's causing us, whatever, to kind of like pause and take a step back and go like, oh, let's look at like the current landscape here and see what transpires, because there's like some serious problems that need to be solved, and everything else below that is kind of like a nice to have. And so I think like overall, like I'm just really working to maintain like proper perspective of like what's super important right now. It just kind of keeps me in a good place and focused. But so.
Okay, and what do you do to, this is totally off script, but I'm curious to hear, what do you do to maintain your Zen?
To maintain my Zen?
Because I know that you're doing intermittent fasting. I've been doing
Have
some
you?
research.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I like the research.
Are you still doing that?
I've been doing, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And I will talk about that.
I stopped.
Yeah, I will talk about that stuff all day. Yes, I've done intermittent fasting for probably, I don't know, 7-8 years. I eat a plant-based diet, but I have like, honestly, like I have no attachment to like the way that people actually eat, as long as they eat consciously. For me, it just works. I'm really into it. I've been eating that way for like over 10 years, but I think like beyond that, it's like exercise for me is my thing. It's a non-negotiable on a daily basis. And when I say a non-negotiable, it's like about as close to like to that as it can get. Like it's necessary for like my mental health. I make sure and I fit it in no matter what. I mean, and my wife does a great job of.
What do you do? What kind of exercise do you do?
Yeah, so I do. I'm really fortunate. I live right below a really great trail system. So I trail run probably 2 or 3 times a week. I would go to the gym, but like now I do. I have like a ton of like body weight like workouts that I do, and I do yoga once a week. So I go for like a long like ride, like cycle on the weekend when I have more time. I'll usually ride for like 1.5 or 2 hours. So yeah,
cool.
I move a lot.
Cool. And the first question that I want to ask is, what is your connection with humanizing the workplace? Yeah,
I appreciate that question. It's something that we internally as a company have been talking about a lot. It's something we care about deeply as a company, regardless of like our external work. You know, sometimes like we do very tactical work, but internally we talk so much about company culture and like what it means to us. And I think like there now more than ever, like this human factor of work is more important. In what I mean by that is like to me, in my ideal world, work is a place where somebody can show up, where they can like fully express themselves, where they can feel seen and heard, which I think like when it comes down to like the human element, understanding and knowing that somebody sees you and hears you, it builds such a great connection and a level of trust. And it's easy for that to get missed. And I think like work work is a place where you can become a better person, not just a better professional. And it's
Mm-hmm.
easy to like to work on job skills, you know, or like want to like level up in your career. But I think like when you can find a place that allows you to become a better person,
Mm-hmm.
the rest of it like falls into place.
And also
so,
be reminded by developing your personal skills, right?
Yeah.
Doing personal development. Yes, yes.
It is, yeah. And I love, like, you know, before this all happened, a lot of companies, more progressive companies, were like moving in that direction. Where like
Mm-hmm.
they were putting a lot more emphasis on EQ, and they were doing like EQ
Mm-hmm.
training and learning
Yeah.
and development and things like that. And I really hope that continues, because I think it's more
We
important.
need it more than ever now. We
Yeah.
need it more than ever.
I just remember. Can I share a quick story?
Yes, yes, of course. Yeah.
Is that okay? All right.
Yeah, of course.
So probably like 6 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I started working for a company. This would be like the second time that I worked for the same company.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for them, took a break, worked for them again. And before I got invited back to join the company again, I had gone through about 2 years of extremely challenging financial times.
Mm-hmm.
Like I went from making the most money I ever had to making the least amount of money I ever had, like almost
Mm-hmm.
overnight, and 2 years of just like complete struggle,
Mm-hmm.
which causes like a whole lot of like relational and personal and crap, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just, so I got invited back. So I jumped back into this company, almost like it was like riding a bike, right? It was like lightning fast. The company
Mm-hmm.
had changed, things took off extremely fast. And I went from being at this extremely low point to making more money in a month than I made the previous years.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like that dramatic, right? I just say that for context to know like how much it shifted my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very appreciative person. I express like appreciation for things and for people who like have an impact in my life. And I think it's really important to do. And it's just kind of naturally how I am.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I couldn't have been more appreciative. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're grateful.
Grateful
Yeah.
of that opportunity, because it dramatically changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I expressed that to he was the COO. And it was a small company, but it was operated like very corporate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I just expressed that to him in a Slack message about how grateful I was, whatever. So he calls me into his office,
Mm-hmm.
and he tells me, basically, don't ever do that again. It makes me think that you're full of crap. And I just like sat there for a moment. It was like,
Wow.
oh, okay. So then like I got it. And I will never forget that, because now I work in a place where we have weekly calls as a team. And part of that weekly call is for us to go around and express gratitude.
I love it.
And I swear, every week somebody from the team expresses gratitude for the company that we have, for the culture that we have, and for their job.
Mm-hmm.
And
Gratitude should be mandatory. It should be mandatory. Yeah.
I think it just made him feel very uncomfortable, because he wasn't a very open, vulnerable person. And so even something like me saying like, dude, like, you've changed my life, was too much for him. And he came back with it. And I was like, man, I can't never, like, that's not the kind of environment that like I think anybody should work in. But
that's interesting.
Yeah,
interesting to have that, because that's also in a way a good connection to the next question.
Sure.
Because does COVID-19 make online employer branding more important than before?
Okay, I don't think it necessarily makes it more important. I think that I just think the context of it has changed. And I can get into it now if you want, about like where I think like I said, like, this industry is changing. It might have changed forever. We'll see what employer branding as an actual thing looks like when this is all said and done. But what I do feel is happening is that finally corporate branding and employer branding are kind of meeting in the middle, in this place where like they've needed to for a really long time. And I think like anybody who's in the employer branding industry has been trying to like scream that message to companies and saying like they're basically two sides of the same coin, but internally there's been this big divide, right? So it's like whoever's handling corporate branding and marketing usually sees employer branding as like a nice to have, not a need to have. But now if you look at like buyer behavior and buyer like motivations, and you look at
investor behavior, right?
Oh, investor behavior too,
yeah.
And you look at candidates as well, like different things matter. And I think like everybody now is so like hyper conscious of the way that companies treat their people, that whether you're selling a product or you're selling a job, it matters the same to both of those people. And like we're making decisions based off of those, because we're hearing some really amazing stories and we're also hearing some pretty terrible stories, and that sticks in our mind. That's just, I think it's just brand.
It reminds me of a simple quote that Maya Angelou had, is people will forget, people will always, I know the last sentence, people will always remember how you made them feel, especially now during this time in COVID. It's very visible how companies are treating their people, which is also being shared on social media and on other news outlets, right? Yeah,
it is. I've been thinking a lot about how like finally this user generated peer-to-peer sharing of like the world of work is finally happening. It's happening organically as a result of a crisis, right? And it's like something that companies were always trying to...
Is it organically though?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess you're right. But I think I think what's happening is what I mean by that is it's unprompted by it's not like an initiative that a company is trying to force. Instead, people are taking their own initiative to like want to talk, and they're saying really good things or they're saying really bad things, but it's actually happening. And so getting back to like where I think employer branding is headed, I think like employer branding has always brought this like really human side of work, but it's been focused at a candidate. And I think like corporate branding and marketing has always had this focus, and rightly so, of like building an emotional tie to a product. And I think like now that emotional tie is going to be connected to the human element. And so you're looking at like creating some extremely compelling content that can resonate with both audiences.
So you're saying, because I think that I'm going to translate what you're saying, because I have that same feeling where I see there is a lot of, money going towards recruiting and attracting people. But after 6 months, after 7 months, or after a year, or after 2 years, I'm like, where is the love? Because you need to show some love towards your people who are working for you. And the examples that I see is it stops there. It stops at once the people are onboarded already. It's done. It's over and done.
I think like what you're speaking to is there's a big internal comms piece that I think is wrapped into this. It hasn't been as much of a focus for employer branding because usually employer branding is focused on the external. But I think like right now, there's so many opportunities to repurpose content, to tell amazing stories and market those internally to your employees, to build this like connection. And I think like the thing that has drawn me and the thing that I love most about employer branding in general is just telling really great stories. I think like that's what it comes down to. And those stories, like I said, the context of those stories, I think is changing a little bit. It's not about just like highlighting like what one person is doing in their role so a candidate can picture that. It's about now highlighting like people and the way you treat people and like unique policies you have and the way like leadership thinks and all this stuff. And like that, a lot of audiences care about that, but I think like nobody cares about it as much as your employees.
I saw a really cool post of a lady that I know, and she shared a funny question post Corona. One of the recruiters was asking, do you have any questions? And the candidate was asking, what are your measurements during Corona? Because when you ask those questions towards the person that is interviewing you, and they have, excellent stories to share, that also raises some connection that they really take care of their people.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, I do have a few people that have comments. So Monique Arrington, shout out to you. She's saying, love this chat already. And 𝗕𝗺𝗃𝗹𝗺𝗹, also shout out to you. She's saying, emotional tie to the human element is key. Thank you, ladies, for joining in the conversation.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
What can companies do to attract and keep their talent during this COVID-19 lockdown? So here in the Netherlands, there are some companies firing the flexible workers, right? Even though the government does have some arrangements to help them, support them financially. And there are also there's also a subsidy for the companies who still need financial support for their hires. So the people there are fixed with them.
Yeah.
How is it in the States?
Yeah. Man, so we work, like you mentioned at the beginning, we work primarily in the high growth startup world, like VC backed, primarily tech. And that space, there's still a number of companies hiring almost at scale like they were before, because they're in industries, or they're in like areas that are a little bit more isolated. Like we have clients that we're working with, and it's, I mean, yes, things are disruptive, but like they're very much still in the game. But then
which
there's
is a positive thing to see, though, because I personally thought that no company would hire because they would lock down all their finances due to this situation.
Yeah. And then there are some companies right now who are just pausing hiring. They're not doing any mass layoffs. They're just saying like, okay, let's play it conservative right now. And which I really appreciate. I think that's a really great move. But then there's a number of startups who are doing a large number of layoffs quickly. And those are the stories that I don't like to hear. Like the thing I need to be careful about is I can't ever imagine what it would be like to be one of those founders who has to answer to a board who has that amount of responsibility and pressure on them. That's just like a world that I can't put myself in. I mean, and so like, I'm not judging that by any means. I think it's about the behavior that
and the way they go about it.
The way they go about it. And there's, but I think like, so if we're looking at like almost two camps, right? Like if we were to talk like a couple months ago, basically like the world that I operate in, everybody's hiring and they're all hiring the same kind of people. But now there's a handful who are hiring and then a whole bunch who aren't, right? And so I think it's about the companies who are still hiring, they're going to see, or they probably have a big increase in volume. And when you see a big increase in volume, you're going to see a big decrease in quality. It's just like they go hand in hand. And so I think like when it comes to attracting, and if you're still hiring, the ability to attract and repel your ideal candidate and create like top of the funnel filters through employer branding content is so important right now, because you have to equip your recruiters and filter for them so they can have really productive conversations instead of like dealing with this massive volume. Now, if you're on pause, now we're talking about retention, and we're talking about some of the things that we just previously talked about, where like it's about taking care of your people, and it's about telling really great stories internally, having really great internal communications, and like leadership stepping up and making people feel secure. That's what, and that's like the retention factor. But like there's camps now. Instead of it being like one big camp that everybody was living in, it's like you're either hiring or you're not. But there's definitely
I also wanted to add on something to your to what you're sharing, because I've seen in the Netherlands, I can't see globally, but I've seen in the Netherlands that candidates are being held hostage, doing multiple interviews, hours, like 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, just for one job. And I'm just like, okay, but isn't there an efficient way to do that? Isn't there an efficient way to do the testing, to do the assessment, and know that also they are dealing with a new normal, right? You're dealing with a new normal, they are dealing with a new normal, and try to ask for feedback, what works, what doesn't work, so that you can always adjust things, adjust the processes.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. I mean, that's a really great point. And I think like for companies, like hiring, their bandwidth is extremely limited right now, right?
Yeah.
Most talent teams are dealing with limited bandwidth to begin with, especially if you're at a growth stage company. It's like your hair on fire all the time, and like you barely have time to think, right? So if you're still hiring, you're still in that camp, and you're basically like evaluating processes in real time. And I think that feedback or somebody having some oversight over that to like go, okay, here are some things we need to fix quickly. It's super important. I know that's easier said than done. But on the other side of it, for companies who are paused right now, this is a wonderful time to really double down on strategy. I've always been like really high on execution, low strategy. I think that's just the way that startups move. And that's the way that I think like employer branding should operate.
I'm going to ask you to repeat that because I think that's a very important thing that you're saying. So what is it about strategy? What is it that we need to do at the moment right now?
Yeah. So for teams who actually now have time, they've like recouped some bandwidth. Now is the time to look at hiring their processes, to look at like what's being done poorly, to restructure it to create a really amazing candidate experience. Now's the time that they can finally create all the content that they wanted to. They can like test it internally first, and they can start like building up brand assets. And I consider candidate experience very much a brand asset, building up these like brand assets, because we're going to come out of this. And when we come out of this, you
can come out stronger.
You can like hit the ground running because you've put in like all this work. And so I think like now is the best time for people to like really look at that stuff strategically, because you just won't have the time when we come out of it, and it'll just get put by the wayside. So.
Okay, I read something about the employer brand Kool-Aid, and I know that Kool-Aid is some kind of a lemonade, but I'm not fond of it.
Maybe it's an American term.
Yeah, I know the Kool-Aid. I know the Kool-Aid, but why is it that you're refusing to drink this, and what's wrong with it?
Oh yeah, so like I mean like when you drink your own Kool-Aid, it means like you kind of have like your blinders on, and like you're just like. You're caught up in your own stuff and you think it's all wonderful, right?
Some important people in your countries do that. So
yeah. So like, I think it's really important, regardless of whatever industry you're in, to like not drink the Kool-Aid, because if you do, you'll just have blinders on and you won't see like kind of the reality of it. And so I'm very careful to not do that with employer branding. Here's the thing, like employer branding, candidate experience, all this kind of stuff. These are very agreeable terms. You could like present it in a way where people in general will go like, yes, that makes a whole lot of sense. But like the reality of it is like employer branding isn't going to solve all your problems. It's not the like magic bullet.
Holy Grail.
For like talent acquisition. It's not. What it is it's a complement, and it's an enabler to do it better. And it's a long-term play to move a talent team and a culture. I think like more in the directions that you want. Like a talent team can become more marketers than salespeople because there's brand recognition. A culture can be more collaborative and united and connected because you're promoting things internally. But like, I think I always want to be careful to not position employer branding as like, this is going to solve all of your problems, because it's not going to solve all your problems. It's a piece of it. And like right now, I've never felt stronger about that, because we're dealing with something that is so much bigger and so much more important than anything any of us do. Like to think that like a problem that I'm solving or a problem that anybody is solving is more important than the number one problem that the world is solving is ridiculous. And like everything else is a nice to have right now. And so anyway, that's kind of like, I just like always try to check myself against that and go like, all right, like let's be practical, you know, about all of this stuff, even in good times. Like, it's just kind of the way I roll with it.
Okay. And then the next question, why, can you share why you believe that the blind spot at founder level will kill the employer branding of a company? I saw that in the post you recently shared.
Yeah.
Why did you feel the need to share that?
Yeah. Because I think that founders can fall into two camps. One, it could be like product revenue focused. Then you have some founders who are very people centric, right? I'm not I don't think either one is good or bad. I think it's just kind of the direction that founders can go. But when you can get too caught up in either one of those worlds, but especially in like the product revenue focused world, that's where you see extremely high growth.
At the cost of people.
At the cost of people, because I've had a lot of conversations with people leaders who work at companies who have grown extremely fast, quickly, and they look up after a couple of years and go like, whoa, this isn't the company that we were to begin with. Who are we now? And they go through this like identity crisis period. And that's just a result of like putting focus on other things. And I think like, so if you have like those blinders on at the top, it's just naturally going to trickle down. And I think there's some founders who do a wonderful job of balancing like the reality of growing a business and needing to have like a wonderful like product and revenue and satisfy investors and all that kind of stuff. But they also see that like people first is like an actual business strategy.
But is it also that the founders that you were talking about or warning us about, are they creating an unsafe environment where people can be honest and help them and give feedback so that they can excel from that?
Wait, are they creating a safe environment for that?
Unsafe. Yeah.
By neglecting the people side of things? Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's like, yeah, I mean, like an unsafe, when I think of unsafe, I think of like a place where somebody can't feel, where they can't feel. How about that? Like I can just leave it at that. And like, you know, where they have to like be a version of themselves because they have to like check a box, like those types of things. Like, you know, at the beginning, you can come into a company as like a new employee and you're jazzed about like all the stuff, right? Especially like at startups, like it's just like, whoa, this is like a cool world and like all this, you know, but then like
6 months it wears off.
Right. That's the thing where like now all of a sudden you start shifting as a professional and like you want to express this other side of you, and that's being like more held back. That just takes its toll, I think. But there are companies who do a wonderful job at like balancing the two. And I think that's like where the magic happens, because both have to happen. Yeah. You can't just be like one or the other.
And also you're mentioning that it will take a toll, but then again, we are dealing with a new normal. And I also wanted to, it's weird that I have to make this prediction. And also it's weird that I feel angry and sad about to make this prediction, but I can sense the burnout rate will be sky high within a few months. And people, let's say that if you were a person, an employee or a coworker who was already not being themselves, so not being that full potential or not showing your full potential because you felt like it's an unsafe environment where you could be yourself, dealing with this new normal can only trigger more negative emotions.
Yeah. You know, it really, it can. I mean, there's just a lot more we're dealing with. I mean, it's like, it's interesting to see like how when the world was like in the previous world.
which world previously, before 2020?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So like before this crisis, like for me personally, I would look at like some aspects of like work. And that would be like a big source of stress for me. Like, oh, like I'm overwhelmed. I'm so busy, whatever, you know, like just being like me. And then, but like now, compared to like what I'm going to call real life. Work is like it's an escape. Like, I mean, because like I love what I do and it's a place for me to like come and like do my thing. But like when I get off this call, like I'm going back to a 5-year-old who's bouncing off the walls with the puppy and like all that kind of stuff. Like that's a lot. That's hard. And so, and there's like financial stuff that people are dealing with. And like, there's a lot of weight right now.
Yeah. And imagine that, because I imagine that, you know, you have a loving family, but there are also a lot of people dealing with situations where they don't have a loving environment, kids, or maybe the partners or the spouses. We also have to be mindful about that, because here in the Netherlands, we have a national child telephone where kids can call so that they can share the struggles and the challenges they have at home, because now they're safe haven, like school or like other places like exercise. It's gone now. And it was booming. It was really booming. So be mindful of each other and try to count to 10. I've done that a couple of times, or maybe to 100, because this situation is different. Yeah. This question, I think I saw that on your, also I was, like I said, I was doing my research, and why do you think now, why is it now the best time to work on culture branding?
Yeah, this is like kind of going back to what I was saying before. I think the importance being placed on company culture, I think it's always been extremely important. And for a lot of companies, it's been a great talking point. Yeah. But like now it's like evident how much of a difference maker it really is. And companies who've done a really great job, they need to tell more of those stories. And I think like employer branding actually is culture branding. I think you're branding the culture, you're marketing culture to the outside world. I can't remember who said that. It's not my quote, but it's a wonderful quote. And that's what I think it's all about right now. And like, there's companies, I talk like a lot about Patagonia. I'm a big fan of Patagonia. I think they have wonderful products. But at the same time, they do a wonderful job of marketing their culture to everybody. You know what they stand for, you know, their belief system, their values, how they treat their employees. They have some like extremely creative people policies.
But I'm not discrediting Patagonia, but it did remind me of a company and a person that I had put on a highly plateau. I was admiring that person. He had a plane company. He was talking about putting your people first so that they can put your clients first. I think you heard the story about Richard Branson. What do you think about him now? Seeing and knowing what he recently shared and said. Where
I don't think I even know the story.
Oh, the story is he was one of the first person who said he's going to fire the people once Corona came out. He was one of the first person who said, I have to fire people.
Okay.
It changed my perspective, and it changed my view regarding him and regarding the brand, and also regarding every quote he was sharing that you put your people first. It didn't apply anymore. He could easily sell one of his islands to maintain.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm again, like,
so maybe I should put it in a different perspective.
Yeah.
Did you see a company that you used as a good example, great example, but due to the fact during the new normal, they have shown their different true color?
I read, sure, I'll call them out. I was gonna not do it. I read this article about, I think it's Bird scooters. Super hot startup, I think in LA. You know, they're like you know who I'm talking about. I heard a story. I was reading this New York Times article about startups who are going down. And the way that they handled their their firing was like pretty cowardly, in my opinion. I mean, it was basically like putting 100 people on a conference call and firing them. And from what the article said, all the senior leadership had their video off to protect like their privacy, which that's pretty rough.
I mean, I've seen, you know, weird things happening on Zoom calls, but this is this is not human anymore.
Yeah, and like again, it's like I'm not at all judging tough decisions that companies have to make right now.
Yeah, but what about the one-on-one? What about, you know,
that's
having
what I
that
mean.
one-on-one conversation where you keep the humanity intact? Because know that a lot of people are going to mourn their job loss. They have to mourn their job loss, right? Yeah.
You know, like the behavior part of it is the part that like that I have trouble with. Now on the flip side, like I heard a story about Airbnb, like, well, Airbnb I just read right before we jumped on. They just raised like $1 billion. But
wow.
Like they just got this huge infusion of cash. But
who's staying? But people are not allowed to stay in other people's places.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know too much. I haven't like read into it, but like but what I was going to say was I did hear about their senior leadership taking big pay cuts, and they were holding back
positive.
800 million. Yeah, they were like reserving like $800 million in like digital ad spend right now to like increase runway, stuff like that. Like that's I like to hear stories like that.
Yeah. And I also, before we were online, we were talking about, you know, the mental health aspect. And I do want to give Starbucks a shout out, at least Starbucks in the US, even though they are globally. I noticed that Starbucks in the US is supporting the staff members, but not only the staff members, but also their family members to at least go to counseling or have mental health counseling for, I think, 20 times, so that because they know what will happen, and other companies should follow. Because regarding this situation, anxiety, stress, depression, it will be much worse if you don't act up now as a company and at least reserve some money aside for this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'll just agree. Like it's I mean,
because you have been a remote worker for a while now, but still this situation is new to you.
It is. It's new. I mean, it's new like as an industry, it's new for our business. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's not like, I mean, just because like I've been working remote for a long time and we're a fully remote team, like all of that kind of stuff is like in place, right?
Yeah.
But like everything else has changed. And so, I mean, like even as a company, like we're rethinking some of the things that like we might be doing, but we're also being extremely patient to see like what the market needs. And like right now it's like too early. Like I can't predict what the market needs. I have some like inclinations about the way the industry is going, but to say that like I would know, like I don't know. I don't think nobody knows. I just have some ideas.
What do you predict after this? After post-corona? So the good things and the bad side. Name a few pluses and a few minuses regarding this.
Yeah, pluses. This is what I really hope. I really hope that companies see remote work as like a must-have, and
or at least have the flexibility to have the option to work remotely from time to time, right? Yeah.
Right. I don't want it. I want companies, yes. How about that? To like embrace flexibility, and to have like processes and systems in place to help those people thrive. I know that there's some people like me who thrive in a remote environment because of my personality, and there's some people who need to be in an office. But I think companies
can I not work with you in an office, or
me?
Why is it because of your personality?
Oh, because so like I'm actually like pretty introverted. I do not like distractions. I do not get lonely at all.
Okay.
I am like I'm not kidding. Like basically from the time I get up, I am like, get stuff done all the time. And it's like, but at the same time, that's hard on like my mental health, which I've been spoken about. But like me being in my own little environment,
it works for you. If it works for you, then it works for you.
Thing.
Right?
That's what. And like I always try to really like make that point that like it works for me because of me. It's not transferable to everybody. And I think like creating, now that we're talking openly about this, like creating an environment where people can work in a place that they will thrive, whether that means like they're working by themselves in a garage like I am, or they're working in like a collaborative office, whatever. I think like setting people up for like ultimate success instead of like putting them in a box and saying like, this is what you have to do. So anyway, so that's like one thing that I really hope comes out of this. On the employer branding front, I think that this has blown the doors off of creative boundaries when it comes to employer branding. Like, I don't know if you saw the video Facebook put out about, I think it's called Never Alone or something like that. It was amazing. I
haven't seen it, but I'll definitely go look for it. Yeah.
Check it out. That is employer branding. That is corporate branding. That is like, that's just like emotional connection. And I think like employer branding now, like there's no limits to the creativity. Before you might have had to play it conservative and all that, but like, it's like, you can really run with some cool stuff and tell some amazing stories, which that's what I'm excited about. And also too, this whole like kick I'm on right now about like people first being like a real business strategy. It's like, it's become clear that it actually is. And I think like companies will take note. Now on the negative side, I think your point about burnout is one of those things. And I think like just overall, like the mental health side of what people are going through right now, like myself included, is just, we're just dealing with so much right now. And I think like we need to be there for each other as friends, as colleagues, whatever, and like kind of put some of the other stuff aside and realize that like everything's not about work right now.
And also like, not being able to work in the same pace as you used to, right? Before this happened.
Like my team, like we're very connected and we reach out to each other throughout the day on Slack and just check in with each other. And sometimes we'll just jump on like a one-on-one call to just like talk and vent and do, you know, and just be people. And I think like that kind of stuff, we need a release valve right now. And that release valve can't just be our family, because we can't just take all of our crap out on our family. We need some people like, and I think that will help like ease some of this pressure.
And also, I also wanted to share that a lot comes to, managers have to deal with a lot, but managers also need a support system, and the support system need a support system. So that's why I really want to emphasize on be as human as you can, and also share that you are, you know, that you're dealing with your own challenges, but at least find somebody, accountability or accountability partner, so that you can vent or that you can share whatever you're dealing with. Why? Because after today, after Corona, the stigma regarding mental health, there will be no stigma. Because everybody has dealt with a minor situation or a major situation when it comes to mental health.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. No, everybody's dealing with this new normal that we're currently facing. Everybody will be affected with their mental health. And to be honest, I am as well. I have, you know, I have my tips or my things that I do. I try after this, I'm going to log out and spend some time in my sauna. And nice. That's for me, that's my way to have some me time or relaxation time. But I try to minimize my online engagement, because I can't be anywhere, everywhere, and be a teacher and be a friend and be this and be that. But I do love doing these interviews, though.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it's super fun.
So the last question that I have, and now I won't kidnap you any longer.
Sure.
Can you share your wish for 2025 when it comes to humanizing the workplace and employer branding?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I think work needs to be a place where people can grow. Just to grow as people. I think work needs to be a place where people can solve really interesting problems and not be just confined to like a role description. And yeah, I want to see work moving in this direction of like collaborative problem solving and not just like checking the box of like
the 9 to 5 or working 60 hours just to be there, be present. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, like if you as an organization, and whether you as an organization or you as a team, if we're talking about bigger companies, if you just break it down to like microculture, if you're focused on what problems you're solving and then recruiting the people to come together to solve that problem, it creates this whole different dynamic and meaning to work, instead of like, this is your role and this is your role and this is your role. And like, you know, like that's just not modern work. But people are still being plugged into that.
Yeah. It's because they're dealing with managers or companies that have an old way of thinking. And my son would say they have a fixed mindset. They don't have a growth mindset.
And he's 6?
Funny, I have to share this story. So when he was 4, I was having this conversation with his father, and he told us that it's a fixed mindset. And I was like, where did he get that from? Apparently they teach him at school.
That's amazing.
The difference between growth mindset and fixed mindset, which a lot of managers and people from nowadays could definitely use. Yeah. Wow. They teach him at school, and it's taught in every class. In every class, they remind the kids it's okay to make mistakes as long as you learn from that. And when you're learning, you're growing and you're building your growth mindset.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to touch on is that I want work to move in a direction of autonomy. And I think like, I really, autonomy is a trust builder. It conveys that I trust you to get your stuff done. Like we're adults. Like we have put in a lot of time, and some of us have spent a lot of money to get to the place that we're at. And we need to be trusted to do the work that we're equipped to do, that you hired us to do, and to give us some space. Because it just like that behavior alone without words tells so much, and it conveys this feeling of trust that like we really need. Micromanaging makes you feel
Instead of micromanaging, let's put autonomy and mentoring into the same mixer.
Yes, absolutely. It's a big component of like modern work. And so and then like on the employer branding front, like what I want to see, like this is what I want to see right now. Like I just like, this is the opportunity for storytelling. Like storytelling is getting its whatever, just time to shine. I don't know. Like I'm not phrasing that properly, but like, I mean, this is the time to tell really amazing stories. And I just want employer branding to continue moving in that direction where it's like, there's a variety of stories to tell, figure out what your market wants, and just tell the stories that are going to connect with them.
And what I also wanted to add is there are different ways of telling your story. So you can tell your story visual, you can tell your story with wording, but you can also, I'm a fan of podcasting, and you could also tell your story by audio so that they can at least get to know the company, get to know the people, and hear the authenticity and the tone of voice of the company.
Yeah, like, I mean, there's so many mediums now that I think that's just what people want, is they want to know. And I think like companies now are in a position where they are like redefining who they are. And some of these like really human stories are starting to surface. And I just like want companies to like be brave enough to tell those stories, because it's ultimately what's going to like differentiate and like
it's going to be a deal breaker or a deal maker, right? Yeah.
But it's exciting. It's like very exciting. So
thank you. The time flew, and I really enjoyed everything that you shared, and I hope that the viewers enjoyed it as well. If you have some questions or some things to share afterwards, just share them, you know, in whatever platform you want to share them, and I'll definitely reach out to Nate. And Nate, I would like to say thank you for being honest, but also sharing your insights of changing the way we should look at employer branding and the culture branding. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. And I'm just going to finish up, but please stay just a few minutes. So I'm just going to finish up, and then I'll chat with you just a few minutes.
Sounds great. Yeah, no problem.
So I have a few things to share, just a few minutes. So there is this workshop that I'm doing, online workshop regarding pump up the jam at remote work. There will be a manager's edition and a employees edition, where I will share some healthy tips about working remote from home. Next upcoming Thursday, I have this special lady, Angela Loy. We're going to talk about behind the scenes, the growth. And Angela is a very special person for me, because she is my personal and business accountability partner. And this is going to be Ask Us Everything. So definitely tune in. It will be in Dutch, but hopefully maybe maybe later on she will do an English version. I'll see where we go from there. So thank you for watching. This was, I am Vivian Acquah with Let's Humanize the Workplace, and I hope that you're staying safe. I hope that you're staying strong, and please keep your distance. Thank you for watching, and until next time, bye.